Hello everyone and welcome to the very beginning of our webinar, Money Matters for Carers. We'll be talking today about a range of different supports for carers experiencing financial hardship. My name's Georgia. Before we commence today, I would really like to pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who may be present here today, particularly to elders past, present and emerging. I'm joining this call from the lands of the Wiradjuri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to acknowledge that wherever in Victoria people may be dialing in from today, this land always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Given that today is all about carers, I'd especially like to acknowledge the many thousands of years of care that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have given to the communities, as well as the lands and waters of Australia. So today we'll be talking about, as mentioned, a range of different supports for carers experiencing financial hardship. My name's Georgia Gardner. I'm a member of the carer engagement team at Merri Cairo Gateway. And I'd like to briefly open up pass the microphone over to my colleague Isabelle to introduce herself as well.
Thanks, Georgia. Hi, everyone. I'm Isabelle. I am a care engagement advisor with Merri Cairo Gateway. And today, Georgia and I are going to be facilitating this webinar with some really fantastic speakers. So you won't see as much as me. I'll be in the background, but I will be popping in with a little bit of timekeeping every now and again. So you'll see me there. I'll pass back to you now, Georgia, to give a bit of an overview. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Isabelle. Today we'll be having some speakers with us from the Telecommunications Industry Ombudsman, Good Shepherd, the Energy and Water Ombudsman of Victoria, Financial Services Rights Victoria, and Financial Counselling Victoria. But to commence today, we will be starting with a little bit of information about Cairo Gateway, which is where Isabelle and I are joining from. So you may already know about Cairo Gateway, and some of our people joining today may in fact work with Cairo Gateway. But we know that we also have a lot of people joining this session who may work with carers, may know carers, but not be as familiar with what Cairo Gateway does and some of the supports that we can provide. So to kick things off today, we will be starting very, very briefly with a bit about what Cairo Gateway is and what we do. So we'll start really quickly with who a carer is. This may be familiar to you all, but just to make sure that we're all working from the same playbook. So a carer is someone who provides unpaid support to a family member, friend or partner who has a disability, mental illness, chronic health condition or age-related condition. Carers come from all different areas of our community, and we have some special supports for young carers who are children and young adults aged 25 years and under. Really importantly, 1 in 8 people in Australia are carers, and that's a lot more than are currently receiving supports and services. So we also wanted to talk a little bit about why we're talking about financial hardship today. So according to some information from Carers Australia, up to 50% of primary carers are on a low income and have difficulty covering their living expenses. Some recent research has found that by age 67, primary carers will lose on average up to $394,000 in lifetime earnings, including quite a significant loss of superannuation. And despite these financial impacts to them individually, carers provide a really, really vital service and support to our communities. Australia's 2.8 million carers provide around 2.2 billion hours of unpaid care per year. And the estimated value of that unpaid care is at $77.9 billion per year if it was to be provided through paid supports. So we really want to acknowledge the work that carers do, the real value of the work that carers do, and the value of carers themselves. So today we'll be talking about a range of different programs and supports in the community that can help carers that might be experiencing some of these financial challenges. So if you haven't heard about Cairo Gateway before, welcome. We're really excited to tell you a little bit about what we do. Cairo Gateway is the national program for carer support services funded by the Department of Social Services out of Canberra. Really, the core priority of Cairo Gateway is to connect carers to a consistent and accessible service, no matter where in Australia they might live. Cairo Gateway can be accessed primarily through either our phone line or our website. So our phone line is 1800 422 737 and our website is www.cairogateway.gov.au. There's a real range of services that Cairo Gateway can help carers connect with, including emergency and planned respite care, counselling, coaching, connection with other carers through peer support. We also can provide support planning and tailored support packages for carers, as well as through our website, a real range of information and advice and online tools that they might be able to access, even if they're not ready yet to make that call themselves. To access Cairo Gateway is pretty open and accessible. We really pride ourselves in being a very easy to access service. So the only real requirements is that somebody needs to be a family or friend carer. So that's that they're in an unpaid caring role, they're not formally employed to provide care, and that they are in a caring role that is ongoing or likely to be ongoing for around 6 months. Now that 6-month requirement isn't a barrier. We know some caring roles can change or be difficult to predict, particularly, for example, chronic health conditions or mental health conditions. But that's really to understand the difference between really short-term care for someone supporting maybe their brother who's broken their leg at footy practice but will make a full recovery, versus these ongoing caring roles that many carers take on. What's not required for our service is also really important. We don't have any citizenship, residence or visa requirements. We work a lot with new migrants, refugees, asylum seekers and international students. We're not means tested, so we don't look at a carer's finances or their care recipient's finances. We also don't affect any other supports that they might be receiving, and we shouldn't be affected by those. So if the carer or their care recipient is receiving something like an NDIS package, home care package or carer pension, that's absolutely fine. The only time we might look at those other supports is to make sure what we put in place is complementary to other things that are in place for that individual carer or their family. Here in Victoria, Cairo Gateway is delivered by a consortia of health and community organisations led by Merri Health, which is where Isabelle and I are based. The Merri Health statewide team do a lot of the overall coordination here in Victoria, as well as house our intake team. If you were to first call up, you would speak to somebody at our office there. And then we work with local partners who really know their local regions very well. They have many years of delivering care support services in their regions. And through this program, we're really able to tailor localised services with a really consistent access point. So we really try to get the best of both worlds. You can see on the screen here our Metro Melbourne partners, including Bendigo Health in Melton, Merri Health in the west and north of Melbourne, Uniting Vic Tas and Alfred Health over to the east. And on this map on the screen now, you can also see our regional and rural partners, including Ballarat Health, Barwon Health, Bendigo Health, Family Care and Uniting Vic Tas. What's really important here is that no matter where somebody lives in Victoria, they can call Cairo Gateway, or you as a service provider can call Cairo Gateway on 1800 422 737 for access to supports and services, and we'll help with all of the rest of the navigation from there. So we also just tell you a little bit about what it would look like if you were to refer somebody. So there's that initial contact point, as we said, mainly through the phone line, but also possibly through the website. Once somebody reaches out to us, they speak with our intake team at Merri Health, who take down their details, check for any urgency or emergency. And if there are emergencies, we will put some specific programs and supports in place. If there's no urgency going on, they'll go through a normal pathway through to the local outlet for their region, where they'll work with a support worker to talk about what's going on in their life, how that caring role is impacting them, and some supports will be planned and put in place for them. Then through towards the end of this time with the program, so that might be depending on that individual carer's needs, maybe 3 months, 6 months or 12 months down the track, there'll be some more, another check-in to make sure that the services have really been helpful, that their needs are being met. And if all is well and the carer has made the improvements that they were hoping to make, then they will end their time with our service, but can of course get in touch with us if they ever need. So in terms of getting in touch with us, as we mentioned, the 1-800 number is usually how people reach out. That's open 8 till 5 on weekdays to the intake team directly, but that phone line is also active 24/7 to get through to our emergency team. There's also online support and a request a callback button from the Cairo Gateway website. Then importantly for service providers, we also have a dedicated referral pathway here in Victoria for any e-referrals. So if you're working with a carer, you already have all their details and you get their consent to make a referral through to us, you can access the e-referral via the link that's on the page now and put them through to us a bit more directly than them needing to make that call themselves. But of course, if you ever have any questions or any issues, please give us a call on that 1-800 number and have a chat, see how we can help. So that's the end of my really quick rundown of everything Cairo Gateway is. I haven't gone into the services in detail because we are brief on time and many of you here may already be familiar. But really importantly, today we'll be moving on to speak with our presenters. Our next speaker is from Good Shepherd. Romy, if you are able to start sharing your slides, we can hand the microphone over to you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to turn it into a slideshow. My name is Romy Prince and I'm a financial capability worker here at Good Shepherd. I would like to start off by recognising and giving respect to the Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islanders from around the state and around the country, and to recognise that they are the traditional owners of the land and that sovereignty has never been ceded. For those of you that have never heard of Good Shepherd before, Good Shepherd is an organisation that seeks to increase economic participation and well-being, to build resilience and to improve the safety and bring about economic change. And one of the ways we do that is by offering microfinance programs and products, and also to provide financial counselling, coaching and capability workers. So this slide talks a little bit about the cost of caring. Some of it was mentioned earlier on, that in 2020, it was predicted that 2.8 million Australians will provide informal care in 2020. So the carers are not alone. There are many Australians that do this role. Around 906,000 primary carers and around 1.9 million non-primary carers. They provide 2.2 billion hours of care each year, and that informal care has been valued at $77.9 billion in 2020. So that's quite a large amount of money saved from the economy by those people that are providing care. And as a result, you will know from your experience with carers that many of these informal carers either partially or fully withdraw from work to provide care, and the lost earnings or opportunity cost from the reduced employment is valued at about $15.2 billion. I am a financial capability worker in Good Shepherd. My catchment area is the south and southeast of Melbourne. But through the DSS funded program, there are organisations all over the state that provide financial capability workers to be able to give help to those carers, both formal and informal, that need help in being able to deal better with their money. I'm going to go on to explain a little bit more about what it is that I do and how about we do it. So, what are some of the causes of financial difficulty for carers? From what I've come across, it's either, as I just said in the prior screen, that people are now not working because they've become a carer, or they're not working to their full potential of hours, so it's underemployment. That leads to lower income or poverty. There's often illnesses, addictions, and mental health illnesses. Because they've become a carer, or because maybe the main income earner or a significant person in the household has now become ill, it means that there's a significant changes in lifestyle. There's now all these extra costs sometimes for providing extra support for those people that you're caring for. A lot of the carers are unaware of available grants, concessions, and discounts, and that's why we're able to come in to help. And sometimes there's a lack of confidence about money. Maybe the person who was responsible for all the money in the household by choice and by arrangement is now become ill. And sometimes someone else has to step up to deal with the money and make decisions they've never had to make before, and all by themselves. And this is a way where we're able to provide support to those people. Now, there's lots of different financial programs that provide help. Here is some of them. So as I said, I am a financial capability worker or a coach. So what I do is I go through information and options that are available. The participants I deal with are not in a state of crisis. If they are, I refer them through to the National Debt Hotline or the financial counsellors, and you're going to hear from them very shortly. The participant needs to focus. They come and explain what their issues are, and we work through their issues. Often it's about the future. It's about goal setting, trying to understand how we can help. And then there's follow-up as well. So often could be one session, and it could be a few sessions. Our financial counsellors, I'm going to leave that because we're going to have people from Financial Counselling Victoria here. So I'll let them speak about what it is, but it's a lot more people usually in crisis. Financial education is just information only. It's not generally tailored to the individual person's situation, which is what we're able to do. Financial planning is about giving advice, and it's often on specific topics, and it's led by a planner or an advisor. And there's often fees associated to that service. There's no fees associated to our service. Then there are also financial hardship programs for people experiencing difficulty, and they can often be from providers, from banks, and from other organisations as well. And you've just heard a little bit about that from the Telecommunications Ombudsman. So who benefits from a financial capability worker? The carers are able to develop their own financial knowledge and financial management skills. They often build a longer capacity to budget. Often we'll sit down and do a budget together. So providing budgeting support and able to manage their money better. And also because it's tailored, the education and what I speak to them about is tailored to their needs. They're able to make better informed decisions. So examples of clients who are carers that I've seen, sometimes I deal with older women who are responsible for finances for the first time. Their partners become ill. They've never had to deal with the money in the house before, and they need to develop the skills and the knowledge. While there are other significant changes in their lifestyle, they're often at a point of exhaustion. They don't know who else to turn to, and it's one other thing that they find very overwhelming. And it's an honour to be able to provide people with support in those times of need. I also have dealt with single parents who are trying to raise children with disabilities, and they need to understand their entitlements to make changes in their behaviours and in their attitudes as well. And some of the feedbacks I've received from clients about our services who are carers is that they identify the knowledge that they've gained and the positive changes that they've made because of the services, and some of them have already recommended the service to other people. One said that the most valuable part was having the support, knowing that I was going in the right direction and that I just needed a little supportive push. So let me tell you about one of my clients who was a carer. There was Alice, not her real name, who lost her sister to cancer. She took in her 2 orphan nieces to comply with her sister's dying wishes. Their father was not in the picture. So Alice and her husband were able to meet the cost of living of their own family. But now with 2 extra tweens and one of them having special needs, they were struggling to meet the rising cost of living, and Alice was referred to me as a financial capability worker. I worked with Alice, we created a budget, and Alice accomplished a lot. Some of Alice's accomplishments included that she spoke to a financial information officer from Centrelink and learned about a new pension that she was eligible for because she was looking after these 2 nieces, and there was a thing called a double orphan pension that she became entitled to, which helped her a lot. She rang the school and was able to receive extra help with the uniforms and the school books for her nieces. She set up, we looked at her banking structure and discussed what would work best for her. She was able to set up a second bank account for her regular bills and transferred money there each fortnight. So when the bills came in, there was enough money for them when they fell due. Alice was able to speak about money with her son and her nieces. They started to sell some of their own old clothes and some other things around the house and used that money that they raised to buy themselves new clothes and would often go to op shops. So that's some of the ways that I was able to help one particular client. Each client is different, but we look at a whole variety of different things.
Hey, Romy, just popping in with a quick timekeeping note that we're nearly at 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So we look at their financial knowledge, we look at their skills and their behaviours. You're going to hear about utility bills soon. We want to make sure that they have the knowledge. We want to make sure that they have the necessary skills to be able to apply that knowledge. And then do they have the behaviours? What's actually stopping them from being able to do it as well? So there's a Commonwealth Financial Capability and Counselling program. I'm actually going to pop the link that you see up on screen into the chat at the end of my program, at the end of my presentation, and the instructions there that you can go and find out which organisation actually services the area that you live in. There's a whole range of them. And I will also put in the link for the Financial Capability Program at Good Shepherd, which is for the inner Melbourne, Western Melbourne, inner South and Southeastern Melbourne. So it is a really good service to be able to help carers and provide them with an extra level of support. So I hope that you found this useful and you're able to access it for your carers.
Thank you so much, Romy. We really appreciate you sharing that info, and we know it is a bit of a quick time session for everybody here today. So our next speaker is Melanie from the Energy and Water Ombudsman Victoria. Mel, are you able to get your slides going?
I sure will.
Thank you.
And here we go.
Thanks.
So I'll just start with acknowledgement as well. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and those who are listening today. So my name is Mel. I am from the Energy and Water Ombudsman of Victoria. I'm the Community Outreach and Stakeholder Engagement Officer. So we resolve complaints about electricity, gas and water. Bear with me, I'm just going to remove my zip. We're an independent and impartial dispute resolution service, and we are free. So we look at the facts and the individual circumstances of all the complaints that come through in order to make a fair and reasonable decision. And we also provide information and advice to customers and refer people to other support services when and where that's appropriate. So what sort of complaints do we deal with? Well, at the moment, as you can imagine, in the current sort of rising cost of living time that we're in, we're seeing a lot of complaints come through about really high bills and about catch-up bills. So we can look into those and determine if people are being billed correctly or if there's been some billing errors. So unexpected high bills, delayed bills, and billing mistakes. Sometimes a billing mistake will also be a concession that may have dropped off a utility bill. We can work really quickly to have that re-added. We also deal with connection and transfer issues. So, new builds that are trying to be connected to the grid or the water supply, and also people that are transferring between retailers. We can deal with those as well. We do deal with complaints about meters, poles, wires, and pipes. So that's the infrastructure that provides, you with your electricity, gas, and water. And of course, we deal with power outages and surges. In particular, you probably can recall in Victoria, we had a series of pretty catastrophic storm events last year and the year before. So we did take a lot of complaints from people who experienced prolonged power outages. So after 2 years of living in the global pandemic, we know that there's been a significant impact to Victorians and carers and their financial situations. We also know that retailers have recommenced debt collection as of the start of this year and also disconnections. More recently, as you would probably be aware, and it's all through the news at the moment, price increases to wholesale energy have resulted in significant increases in electricity and gas. We expect the competition between the various retailers in Victoria to limit, I guess, the competitive types of plans that you might have been used to seeing. We expect them to sort of level out a little bit more. But I guess the main point here is that the cost of living is likely, to drive a real increase in financial hardship and household debt. And that is a particular concern to us at the moment. So one of the ways, or one of the most important things to be aware of is that with regards to energy, there is a framework called the Payment Difficulty Framework. It is a suite of entitlements that providers or your retailers, so your electricity and gas company, they are obligated to provide these entitlements to you if you contact them and let them know that you're experiencing financial hardship or just payment difficulty. And it could be something that's very temporary, or perhaps it's an ongoing issue that you've been experiencing. So the level of assistance is based on the amount that's owing. So if you've got less than $55 owing, and let's face it, an individual bill is likely to be more than that. So quite often it's going to be over this amount. But if you owe less than $55 and you need a little bit of help to manage the money that you owe, there's a few things that they must do. So you're identifying that you're struggling. Your retailer must give you more time to pay the bill, or they can work out a plan for you to pay off what you owe in regular instalments, or perhaps it's irregular. You might be able to pay $100 towards an amount that's owed and then $20 later. They can look at both options. And if you want to set up a centre pay arrangement, perhaps through Services Australia, or even set up a regular payment in advance structure, they need to look at that with you. If you've got more than $55 owing, well, there's a lot more that they need to be doing for you, your retailer. So they can set up a payment plan for you to pay what you're currently using, and then whatever's sort of maybe built up in the background, they can set up a plan for you to address those arrears over a 2-year period. Or alternatively, they can set up a payment plan where that amount that you might be owing is placed on hold for 6 months whilst you work to get yourself back into a better financial position. And they need to talk to you about how to reduce your energy costs. So your electricity and gas company also need to make sure that you're receiving your government concessions or any grants that you might be entitled to. They need to provide you with practical information, so real world information about how you can reduce, the energy that you're using in the house. Again, they need to talk about options to repay any amount that you might owe. And this one's really, really important. They need to take a look at what plan you're currently on, and they need to determine if maybe there's another plan that they can offer you that can help save you money. So it's really, really important that you do engage with your retailer if you're experiencing any type of financial hardship. The same applies with water. So the water industry also has a suite of entitlements that they must offer to anybody that contacts them to identify that they might be struggling a little bit, be it temporary or long term. One of the most, I guess one of the best things that's available to people who have probably been experiencing prolonged financial difficulty is that there's a grant available called the Utility Relief Grant. It's available to customers with temporary or long-term affordability issues, and those that are at risk of being disconnected or restricted. That's not a situation that anyone wants to find themselves in. So that grant is $650 over a 2-year period, or all at once if you need that much at once, for electricity. So $650 for electricity, $650 for gas, and $650 for water. If you've only got one utility, so say the house is entirely electric, well, that's $1,300 that you can apply for. There is an eligibility criteria, but it's certainly worth looking to see if you're eligible, just to check. And things like unexpected circumstances, they can all be taken into consideration. The cost of your rent compared with your income, or maybe the mortgage, if you're on concessions, those things are all taken into consideration. And another really important thing to remember is that as of the 1st of October in 2020, your retailer, your provider, needs to provide you with support to apply for those grants. And that does include filling them out and submitting them if that's what you would prefer them to do on your behalf. So that just cuts out that really exhausting process of filling out forms, waiting for something to be sent to you and then filling it in and sending it back out. So that's something really important to remember. We'll just move into our complaint process. So if you're not getting the support from your retailer, if they're not engaging with you or providing you with that practical advice or telling you about your entitlements, if they're not helping you, that's when you should consider coming to Ewolf. It's a very easy process. We'll talk about the ways you can contact us in the next slide. But the first thing you need to do is give your provider an opportunity to talk to you and provide that advice and assistance. If that doesn't happen, then come to us. So once you contact us, we'll take down your information, the details of the issue that you're experiencing. And what we do then is we refer that back to the provider, but it goes to a higher level, more experienced team. Those people have good industry knowledge. They understand financial hardship. They're really very experienced. And our referral goes to them, and they have 3 business days to then contact you to start engaging with you about this issue. So fortunately, because we understand how important electricity, gas and water are, that time frame from when you contact us to when you might hear from someone more senior and be able to start to resolve the complaint is very, very quick. And oftentimes people can have an issue sorted, within a period of about a week. With disconnections, we can get people reconnected on the same day. So, if you're ever disconnected or anyone you know is ever disconnected, encourage them please to contact EWOV. We can arrange a same-day reconnection. If the complaint isn't resolved with you talking to that higher level person, come back to us, tell us what's happened, tell us what occurred and what the conversation between the 2 parties was. and then we'll let you know if we can investigate the complaint. And that's when the complaint is assigned to a conciliator from our office, who'll work with you and the company to come to some kind of agreement that hopefully is fair and reasonable and that both sides agree with. So you can contact Ewolf in a range of different ways. We have tried to be as accessible as possible. So we have a 1-800 number that's open from Monday to Friday, 8:30 in the morning until 5 p.m. You can also send us an email at ewovinfo@ewolf.com.au. We have a web complaint form, so you can go to our website and log a complaint. It's there on the front page and every page thereafter, so it's very easy to find. We do have an online chat function, and we do accept complaints. So if you don't feel like talking to anyone, or perhaps that's not the most accessible means for you, you can come in and you can log a complaint using the chat function. We allow in-person and welcome in-person visits here to the office on level 8 at Melbourne Central Tower and on Elizabeth Street. And you can also send through complaints by post if that's your preference. Our website is full of really great, really useful information. Again, I cannot stress enough, we know that electricity and gas prices are rising, and now more than ever, the cost of living pressures are having an impact on families and carers as well, obviously. So check out the website. There's lots of great information there. Think about giving us a call, even if it is just to have a chat with us. We do offer interpreter services as well. But yeah, don't hesitate to contact us. It's why we're here. We don't want people to be struggling or experiencing financial debt or disconnection or debt collection letters. We want to help. So yeah, thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Thank you so much, Melanie. I think the general theme of we're all here to help is, I think, a really important one for today. So our next speaker is Dermot from the Social Services Rights Victoria. Apologies for the impromptu rebrand in my opening. I accidentally said financial services. Got financial on the mind today. Dermot, are you able to get everything sharing and take the microphone from here?
Yep, can do. So let me just bring up the slides. So yes, hi everyone, I'm Dermot. I'm a lawyer with Social Security Rights Victoria. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about how Centrelink, which is what we mainly deal with, can help carers and some of the pitfalls that can arise with Centrelink. I mean, that's what we deal with, the people that fall into the pitfalls. So I've got some information to try and help carers avoid those. I'll also be talking a little bit about SSRV generally, how you can get in touch with us and what services we offer. I will just quickly acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. And for me, that's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. There we go. Just make sure I didn't, yep. So first off, who is SSRV? So we are a community legal centre. So as I said, I'm a lawyer. We have a few other lawyers and a few other non-legal staff as well. We're statewide, so anyone in Victoria can access our services, and we specialise in social security law and policy. So what that essentially means is Centrelink, anything to do with Centrelink and social security payments, with a couple of exceptions, because Centrelink does a few other things. We don't handle Medicare, we don't handle child support, and even though it's not Centrelink, it's worth mentioning that we don't do anything in the NDIS space at this time. What do we do in terms of helping? We give information and legal advice to people that need it, and that includes secondary consultations for support workers, financial counsellors, other people working in the community services spaces. We do help people appeal Centrelink decisions. That's the primary thing we do as a legal service. Centrelink problems are legal problems, and so in some cases it can be beneficial to have a lawyer helping you out with that. So when we're talking about Centrelink decisions, we're talking about eligibility. In this case, it might be trying to access carer payment and there's been a rejection. Could be the DSP, that's a big one that we deal with, people getting knocked back for that, which is also relevant to carers because the people they're caring for may be on the disability support pension. And the other big one is Centrelink debts, which we'll talk a little bit about later on. We do provide support and training, and we're very grateful to be part of these kind of sessions where we can provide our information, and we also advocate for law reform. How to get in touch with us, I will reiterate this at the end, but we do have a legal assistance line for individuals. So if a carer needs assistance, they can call us on 94810355 and book an appointment with one of our lawyers. If you are a worker, so financial counsellor, someone supporting carers, whatever it may be, you have access to our worker helpline, which is on 94810655. That runs Monday to Friday. You can basically call up and, subject to the line already being busy, get a lawyer straight away who can help you with a secondary consultation, take you through your client's issue, and point you in the right direction. So very quickly, I'm going to talk about the payments that are available to carers from Centrelink. What I'm hoping you take away from this is basically checking that carers are getting everything that they might be eligible for. So the two big ones are carer payment and carer allowance. Carer payment is an income support payment. It's essentially a pension for people who are giving constant care to someone who has a disability, severe medical condition, or an adult who is frail aged. It is paid at the pension rate, and it has the same income and assets tests as any other pension. And it is an income support payment, recognizing that many people who are caring can't afford time-wise to actually support themselves through work. And so this is where carer payment comes in. Carer allowance is a smaller payment. It's less than $150 a fortnight. It's essentially a supplement to help cover additional costs you may have if you're providing daily care to someone who, again, has a disability, medical condition, or is frail aged. That one doesn't have an assets test, and the income test is very generous. Off the top of my head, I think as long as you're not earning more than $250,000 a year, you can access carer allowance, provided you're providing the relevant care. You can get both carer payment and carer allowance at the same time, and many people do. The other ones that I've mentioned there, carer supplement and the child disability assistance payment, they are both supplements. You don't need to do anything to get those. If you are on the relevant payments on the 1st of July, so tomorrow, you will get those automatically paid. I'm just mentioning that because they are an additional top up that some people get. There is also carer adjustment payment, which is a one-off payment for people who are caring for a child who's had their severe medical condition or disability come around from a catastrophic event. So that could be something like a stroke, cancer, or a car accident. There's a few others that Centrelink list. It's for people who aren't getting carer payment, but they do need to be getting care allowance to get that. And it is a one-off to help them adjust to the new care situation that they're now providing. These payments are a lot more complex than what I've got on this slide. In the time that we've got today, we can't really go through everything. You could spend probably an hour and a half on these payments. But that's why I'd encourage anyone who wants to dive a little bit deeper to get in touch with us. The biggest pitfall that we see people fall into is not being aware of, or not understanding, or not meeting the Centrelink notification obligations. So basically, and this is, I have got some specific examples here for carers and carer payment, though it's important to note that if you're getting any Centrelink payment, or your client is getting any Centrelink payment, the change of circumstances notification within 14 days applies. That's across Centrelink for everything. If you don't update Centrelink or the change in circumstances, there's a real possibility that you end up with an overpayment or a debt. Common changes in circumstances, particularly for carers, include changes to care arrangements. So including if the care receiver goes into formal care or is hospitalised, and I noticed that was mentioned in the chat already, that could change your eligibility for carer payment. Changes to living arrangements. So if someone moves, if you're living with the care receiver and you're no longer, like you move away from them, that could have implications for your eligibility. Changes to income and assets, and changes to relationship status. If in doubt, it is always better to update Centrelink than not. If you tell something that if you tell Centrelink something that they don't need to know, the worst case is they say, thanks, we don't care, and then they move on, and that's it. But if you don't tell them something they do need to know, you could receive more than you're entitled to, and that could result in an overpayment. Centrelink will tell you if they don't need to know it. So it's better to err on the side of caution. In terms of overpayments and debts, I do want to quickly talk about these. Again, this can be quite general with Centrelink. It's not just about carers, but it does come up. If you receive more than you're entitled to, Centrelink will raise a debt, and then they're then obligated to recover that overpayment. So recover the difference between what you received and what you should have received. Recovery can be negotiated with Centrelink. So you can put a payment plan in place, you can put other arrangements in place, you can even ask for a temporary hold. The idea there is that you can limit recovery to a regular payment that you're able to afford. It can be really helpful to speak to a financial counsellor about this. They may be able to do that for you, negotiate on your behalf. They can also help show what your financial position is, so that you can show, look, this is legitimately what I can afford, and set it at that affordable rate. Debt recovery may be waived if the overpayment was solely caused by a Centrelink error. So Centrelink stuffed this up and you had no idea that you were receiving the money incorrectly. Can also be waived, there's a discretion to waive it if there are special circumstances and you haven't knowingly misled Centrelink. As I say, Centrelink problems are legal problems. It's important to get advice about these waivers. It's also important to note that if your debt is a big one, if it's bigger than 10K, it could become a prosecution issue if Centrelink think there's been fraud there. So before you tell Centrelink anything or before you try and justify how the overpayments come about, get some advice to understand what the implications of that are and how to best approach it. And that's where we can come in. I've noted there that debts, like any other Centrelink decision, can be appealed. So very quickly, I just want to talk about review of Centrelink decisions. So there's a few different levels to reviewing decisions. The first is an internal review with an authorised review officer. For debts, there's no time limit. For cancellations or refusal decisions, there is a time limit of 13 weeks. You can appeal outside that time, but you may not get full back pay. In the case of you've had your payment cancelled, you may ask for payment pending review. In the case of a debt, you may ask for the debt recovery to be paused while the review is underway. If you're not happy with the authorised review officer, you can then go to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, and there's two divisions. The first being the Social Security, they're going to change that, Social Services and Child Support Division. Same time limits as for an arrow, so debts, there's no time limit. For other decisions, there's 13 weeks from when you got the arrow decision. Centrelink isn't represented there. It's a free service. It's more like an interview than it is a hearing, but it is the tribunal and it is external. The final level is the Administrative Appeals Tribunal's General Division. There is a 28-day time limit for all kinds of reviews there, and that is a hard time limit, which is a bit different to the earlier levels. Still free, but Centrelink is normally represented by a lawyer, so it is much more formal, and there are conference processes in place. As I've already said, when we're talking about debts, the risks of appealing include that the debt goes up. I haven't covered that. What I mean by that is if Centrelink look at the calculations again and discover, actually, sorry, the debt should have been higher. We've actually overpaid you more than we thought. They will increase that. There is also the risk of prosecution, and again, getting them to more closely look at a file, at your situation, may shed light on something they didn't see before, and then they send it off for prosecution. Also, anything that you tell Centrelink could be used in a prosecution. So there's a bit of a risk of self-incrimination. It's just like talking to the police, but that's why we're here to give you advice about that before talking to Centrelink. So that's a very quick overview of some of the payments that are available, some of the pitfalls, and where to get help. And just to reiterate, for workers who are mostly in this call today, please give us a call on the work helpline. We're available all day, every day, all week. And you can basically get a secondary consultation, talk through the issue. And if you want to make a referral as well, that's the best way to get in touch with us. For carers themselves, please give us a call on the legal assistance line. You could book in with one of our lawyers and they can take you through during an appointment for about an hour what the situation is. And if there are further services that we can offer, we can talk about that through those appointments. Thanks, Georgia.
Thank you so much, Dermot. Really appreciate that. It's really cool to know that you've got a worker helpline if anybody here needs some more specific information. So our next and final speakers are from Financial Counselling Victoria, and that includes Bella and Susie. I believe we also have our financial counsellor here, who's Kane, who's from the Consumer Action Law Centre. So I'll pass it over to you for our final session. I will just let people know we will be doing some questions after this. So if you want to start putting some questions in the chat or in the Q&A function, we'll be jumping to a bit of a panel to close.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for your patience and your attention covering all these. I don't know about you, I'm finding it all a lot of information to take in, but I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country we're meeting on today. And in my case, that's the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay respect to elders past and present and anyone here today. Right, I've got to make it go. Oh, yeah, here we go. So I'd just like to start quickly with what financial counselling is, and just to clear up any remaining confusion. So for someone to call themselves a financial counsellor, it is actually a restricted term. You can only call yourself a financial counsellor if you satisfy certain conditions. One is to be a member of Financial Counselling Victoria, where Bella and I work. Bella Walker is with me today. And so all practicing financial counsellors have to be members of the peak body. You also have to have completed all of your training. So they're skilled professionals, financial counsellors, and they undertake a diploma. You have to keep up with all your continuous professional development requirements, comply with all the requirements of the profession, and in return for that, you're also working under a credit licence exemption from ASIC. And this means that financial counsellors can actually engage with someone's consent, and obviously still maintaining the client makes their own decisions, but they can engage with people like banks and so on directly on the client's behalf. So financial counsellors are skilled professionals, and they help people with their options and particularly help them plan their way out of debt. Their work is always free, it's confidential and independent, so there's no conflict, and there's a lot of work goes on at the peak body to check that all of our members have no conflicts. We don't have financial advisors who do a bit of financial counselling on the side. And it's strengths-based. It's about building the person's capacity, helping them with their options, but the person makes all their own decisions. It's person-centred. There is a link there. You'll be getting the slides, so there's a link there to help you if you want to look into that further. Now, our financial counsellors with us here today, Kane from Consumer Action Law Centre, and Consumer Action Law Centre is hosting, they host the part of the National Debt Helpline in Victoria, and they're hosting the Cairo Pathway that we'll be talking about later. And Kane will be great for any questions. So feel free to post questions that you believe are aimed at a financial counsellor, and Kane will be the one answering them. Now, for some reason, it's not responding to me. There. So what we've developed is some, what we're sort of encouraging people to do is to look out for sorts of red flags that a carer you may be working with just starts talking about, and particularly the most important one, fears and worries about being short of money, especially if those involve debt. Now we understand that there may just not be enough money. So I don't want to over-promise here. For a lot of carers, the problem is there simply isn't enough money, but it's important to work with what there is. Financial counsellors will, they're across a lot of the other agencies we've been talking about today. So they'll work through with someone, perhaps do a bit of an initial check. What are your issues? And I'll be coming to capability information as well later, but what are your issues? Where, if they're aware that you'll get a better assistance with another service, they'll understand exactly which service to suggest. So it'll make a decent diagnosis of what's going on for you. So what we've developed is a bit of a conversation guide to help people. This is specifically for people who are working with carers. And it's, sorry, I'm having trouble with the whole moving the slides. Yeah. So here is this financial conversation guide that has been developed, and we'll be distributing this after the session as well, so that you'll have it and it has links within it. And this is really just some steps that someone might follow when talking to a carer. It's not a script, it's really just some suggestions about what you might want to listen out for. And if you understand that there are financial concerns, then a financial counsellor might be a suitable professional to screen for some of those, and then think about where to go next with that person. So the financial conversation guide also has within it some useful phrases. I know it's sometimes hard to talk to people about money. Bella in particular, who's here, has worked a lot on these materials to try and give people, and we've had a lot of help from Carers Victoria as well, I'd like to acknowledge. And we've developed some ideas here about phrases one might use, not to tell people what to say, but to allow people to get their ideas together ahead of such a conversation. And what we've developed, what that all leads to is this online carer pathway, which is exclusively for carers and gives them easy access to financial counselling through the National Debt Helpline at Consumer Action Law Centre. And as I said, we've got Kane here who can talk about what happens once people get in touch. But the idea of the carer pathway is to make it easier to set up contact with a financial counsellor, recognising that carers are busy and probably frustrated with having to make phone calls, help carers to access assistance as early as possible, and give carers choice about which agency they work through over the long term if they need to. So say someone needs to be referred to a particular agency for casework. Some agencies specialise in particular issues. Some have shorter wait lists than others. Sometimes a carer has a dislike of a particular agency. So all of that can be taken into account in terms of working out where to go next. It doesn't like me. So to use the carer pathway, and you'll get the slides so you can look through this more carefully. And we've also prepared at the bottom of this slide, you'll see a link to a little YouTube video, which just walks you through how to use the carer pathway. Obviously, you need your client's consent to complete a referral on their behalf. And then you fill in the details, and then the client gets a call within a few days, and they're listened to, which is often a very important thing for people. And if there's immediate assistance possible, that's provided, and further assistance means making a further warm referral to a suitable agency.
Susie, sorry, just pop in quickly with a time update. We're just up to 8 minutes, so I just want to make sure we have enough time for Kane to go through the examples as well.
Okay, we're nearly there. So here is the pathway itself. That's what you see when you click through. Sorry, I've slowed us down with my difficulty with the slides. And now I'd like to introduce Kane to talk about what happens once you've gone through this pathway. What sort of things, if you come off mute, Kane, I can't see you yet.
Yep, I've come off mute.
Great. Just looking.
Hi, everybody. I would also just like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands that we're all meeting on. For me, it's the people of the Kulin Nation. Just like to pay my respect to elders, past, present, and emerging. So yeah, we have a couple of examples here, but basically, I'm on the National Debt Helpline. So how we provide support and options for people who are in financial hardship and struggling to pay their bills and their debts. As Susie mentioned, we are very much a strength-based service. So, you know, we aim to help people who have the ability to self-advocate by arming them with the knowledge that they can need to kind of go out and do it on their own. But, you know, we understand that there are some people who just don't have the capacity to self-advocate, and that's when we would make referrals to financial counselling services around Victoria. So yeah, this is an example. You know, we've used the name Merri, but really this is a very common kind of example of anybody who could call our service. So it has an $800 electricity debt and has been placed on an affordable payment plan and cannot meet repayments. Very, very common story, set up on payment plans that are just not affordable. It's the old adage, you can't get blood out of a stone. Providers will often try and get blood out of a stone. So we often get, you know, calls like this. So in situations like that, you know, we would tell Merri about her rights under the payment difficulty framework, as Melanie went through earlier, so I won't go too far into that. We talk about the utility relief grant and help her to begin the application process by telling her that she can contact her utility provider and they will help her with the application. If necessary, make a referral to the Energy and Water Ombudsman and tell them a little bit about that, and then work out how Merri's debt came about and check in about other arrears that may have built up. So, you know, often we look into if there's been an error in terms of, you know, somewhere, like it's not a matter of, maybe it's just that Merri doesn't have enough money, but maybe she was overcharged, or, you know, if it's a credit card, for example, maybe she should never have been given that credit card in the first place. That's the sort of thing a financial counsellor will look into as well. So this is another example. Theo, who had a credit card with one of the big four banks, making the minimum payments on the card, but the debt is not decreasing at all. Again, a very common example. So Theo owns his own home, but only receives carer's pension. The care recipient's medical expenses are increasing, and Theo worries he'll never be able to pay the card off because his income is not likely to increase. So we would provide Theo with assistance about requesting a waiver on his, you know, if he was self-advocating. So we have template letters that we can send to clients that they basically just need to fill in their own information and then they can send that to the bank. But this also might be an example of a time that we might refer Theo out to a financial counselling service in his area, someone who can advocate for him and request a waiver on his behalf.
Thanks, Kane. And we'll have space, I believe, in the Q&A for more questions. So feel free to post any questions about these kinds of matters to Kane. And I'll just put up, there are other ways to contact a financial counsellor. And the fact sheet that we'll be sending, the conversation guide, which is something you can work with, that links to a number of fact sheets. So when you get that, you'll be able to click on the link and look at a number of fact sheets. There's one for carers who want to use the pathway themselves at a time of at their convenience. There's one for care recipients on how to get in touch with the National Debt Helpline in the normal way. And there's a financial capability fact sheet to help carers navigate the range of financial capability programs that are free and that are available to them if what they want to do is learn more about managing their circumstances. That's it from us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susie and Kane. Really, really appreciate all that information, and fantastic to know that there's a dedicated pathway in for carers and as well for anybody supporting carers through their work. So we're open now for about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. If anyone in the audience has some things they'd like to hear a little more about or any particular questions, acknowledging that these should be really general questions. Obviously, we can't provide any individualized advice in this forum. So there's one that's just come through, and I wonder if maybe it's a good question for you, Melanie, at EWOV, though happy to open it up to other participants if it is. There's some questions about whether if somebody's utility payments can't be made, how does that affect their credit rating? And particularly, I was wondering if engaging in your program or some of these other support services might be able to help somebody who's worried about that.
Yeah, so look, if someone is accruing a debt for a utility bill and they're unable to pay it and they're not engaging with their supplier or their provider, quite often the retailer will refer that debt to a credit collection company. There are rules around when they can do that, but that happens, and it's again, as I mentioned in my presentation, the retailers have recommenced taking those actions as of this year. And so if that happens, if your debt is passed on to a credit collection agency, you might find that you're getting repeated calls from them, text messages, it's a horrible place to be in. And yes, your credit rating can be impacted. What we say, and I'm sure, Financial Counsellors Victoria and anyone that works in that sort of support area would say is that contact a financial counsellor. You can contact us directly, speak to someone, and what we will do is we'll ask for the debt to be recalled back to the provider, and then we'll put you two in touch again, work out what you need, and we'll work out a plan for how you can start repaying that debt. We'll look at maybe if there's opportunity to have the debt reduced a little bit. There's a range of things that we can do. I might throw it to FCVic in case they've got any extra sort of advice, or even Kane.
Kane?
No, I think that pretty much covers that question.
Thanks so much, Melanie. Really appreciate it. So there's another one to the Q&A asking, Susie, I think you're the best person to answer this one, where they can get information about all of the concessions in Victoria. Susie, can you speak to that?
Yes, if you just Google DFFH concessions, you'll get to the page. I'll just put it in the chat, the link to the page, but you can get to it just by Googling. And that gives you calculators and all sorts of ways to look.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Susie. And then Kane, there was a question regarding the case study that you used with Theo there about credit card repayments, about whether the bank can place a caveat on the home he owns until the debt is repaid. Could you answer that one?
Yeah, so credit card companies have a wide range of enforcement options available to them if they decide to take legal action. A caveat, I guess, is one of them, but it is quite unlikely we would, if a creditor was going after somebody's property, the more common scenario they would use is to try and make them bankrupt, which is a long and drawn out process, but it is definitely an option that is available to creditors. In a situation like that, if you have a client who meets that criteria, refer them to us immediately, and we will talk them through their options. But yeah, technically a caveat is an option that is available to them.
Thanks, Kane. That's really helpful. It sounds like a lot of the answers are if these problems are brewing, it helps to get information and seek support early. So that's, I think, a general piece of advice if you're working with any clients there.
I can answer a couple of the other questions as well if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm happy for you to do it. Jump in with
Emily's
another.
asked if there's a limit on write-offs. No, not at all. It's just a matter of if the creditor is willing to waive the debt, but there's not a limit in terms of write-offs. And yes, Morgan, once a debt has gone to a debt collector, it's no longer an active utility account. You are no longer able to apply for the utility relief grant. It needs to be an active account.
In saying that, I'll just add though, Kane, as you yourself would know, if you had been engaging with the retailer, if there's any record that you've been trying to sort of deal with the debt, you've been making some payments, and it's within 12 months, Ewolf can look to see what type of efforts you've made or the carer has made to remain in contact with their retailer if they've been making payments. And there have been occasions, we've certainly seen it, where a retailer may, even though the actual ERGs cannot be applied, a retailer will agree that perhaps maybe they could have done more to assist their customer, and they might apply a $650 waiver off the total amount. It's always worth, again, engaging with a financial counsellor or coming to EWOV just to see through the course of an investigation if perhaps there are opportunities to get that debt down.
So if you haven't picked this up already, I think the most important key thing is that if you're in financial hardship, to reach out to somebody. If you don't tell your provider doesn't know. So you can't assume that just because you're not paying your bills, they don't know that you're in hardship. You're not paying your bills. First of all, contact your provider. If you need one, contact a financial counsellor or a financial capability worker. Go to Ewolf or any one of the other ombudsmen. If you haven't told anybody, we're not mind readers, we can't help you. So if that's one of your biggest takeaways, there are people here to help you, and that's what we want to do.
I think that's a fantastic point, Romy. And I know that when it comes to a lot of this space, some people may struggle to identify that they are in financial hardship, or have some really strong emotions about reaching out for help. One of the questions that we got a lot through the for the carer session tomorrow, there was a lot of people saying, how much value carers provide to the economy, why can't there be more supports for them? So I think it's really helpful if anyone is experiencing some of these but is reticent to reach out, doesn't want to make that outreach, just know that you are providing a really valuable support to the community by supporting your care recipient. And so these supports that are available are for you, and you deserve to reach out and see what you can be supported with.
And hopefully this time of difficulty will pass, and there'll be the opportunity for you to be able to pay it forward in the future. But at the moment, you are providing care, and the carers need to be cared for as well.
Fantastic. So we do only have time for a few more questions. There's one specific one about the carer pathway that I think would be really helpful to speak to. Susie, it looks like you've flagged that you'd be able to answer that one in the chat if you don't mind reading the question out as well.
Oh yes, it's about whether or not when someone goes through the carer pathway link, whether the worker can have notification and know if the referral's been completed and what the outcome was. Now, it's important to say that the whole point of, financial counselling is always confidential. So no outcome would be shared with another person without the client's consent. That would be a really important component there, just as the client has to consent to have the warm referral made in the first place by another person. I'll just check and answer afterwards whether a receipt comes, a notification comes to the referring party to say that the referral's been taken up. But generally they are being taken up. It's working quite nicely. So finding out what happened would involve a conversation back with the carer if they chose to share that information. And I think this is the whole point. We're trying to, financial counsellors are trained, they're skilled in having these financial conversations with people. And if you're helping someone with other aspects of their difficulties, often, people are uncomfortable about financial conversations. It's quite helpful if they can have those elsewhere with someone who has the skills and the credit license exemption to help them.
Thanks so much, Susie. I think that's really, really helpful advice. So we're nearly at the end of our time. Were there any final questions that our presenters here can see that they would like to respond to? Or I just will also, if there's a brief sentence or two that anybody would like to say, I guess, to close off, or any information they haven't had a chance to speak to yet on the session today.
Yeah, I might just make a point if I may. Thank you, Georgia. A few questions came through just about providing evidence and supporting documentation when making, raising a complaint with EWOF, or perhaps even in your engagement with other organisations. Just want to make it very clear, victims, survivors of family violence are not required to provide evidence or support of their situation, nor would we ask them to. And in fact, we have processes, as do many organisations, in order to expedite complaints so that they don't even have to tell their story more than once. So just want to make that clear. With regards to other carers that might come to us, there will be, in the initial complaint stages, you're not required to provide any supporting evidence whatsoever. We'll still write down your story as you tell us it has happened, what the situation is. We'll refer it to that higher level person. That person will respond to what we've sent them and communicate with you. If you're not able to get an agreement or a resolution, then if we do investigate, we may ask for some additional information from you, but you're provided with time to get that together. Again, it's certainly not required from the outset.
Thanks so much, Melanie. And I think we've heard a lot that some of the systems that we've got here today, the organisations that we have here today, really do interact and support each other. So the Ombudsman schemes might suggest that you need some support from a financial counsellor to see what you could afford and what's manageable for you. And then some of these other programs might help you access those as well. So it really is quite complementary. So we will be closing off now. I do want to say thank you so much to all of our presenters, and thank you so much to our participants. We've had really great numbers generally, but also a lot of people have stuck around for the whole session, which I know is, for long webinars, is not always the case. We will be sending through a recording of today's session so that you have all the information here. We will also, for those presenters who are happy for us to do so, we will also be sharing the slides. We just need to work out the exact right format for that. And there has been throughout the day a lot of really great resources linked to and online supports as well. So we'll make sure that all of those links are available for you as well. And just to wrap us back to Cairo Gateway itself, for anyone who's working with carers in the community, or if you yourself are a carer, Cairo Gateway is here to be, really aims to be the portal into support. We might be able to provide you with some information connection to these kind of services, as well as the supports that we can provide in-house. So we'll just go back to how you can reach out if you need. So that is, of course, the 1-800 number, 1-800-422-737. And once again, that's 8 till 5 on weekdays to go straight through to our team, and anytime, night or day, for emergency supports for carers. We also have the Cairo Gateway website, www.cairogateway.gov.au, for lots of information and advice. And especially if you'd like to connect a carer into our program, head to ereferral.cairogatewayvictoria.org.au. And again, we'll make sure all of these links are available for participating service providers here today. So thank you very much. I might just call back Isabelle to see if there's anything I have forgotten in my wrap up, but I think we are all good to close for the day.
Yeah, we're all good, Georgia.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for facilitating today. That's why I'm not facilitating. I just want to say thank you again to all the speakers for taking time out of your schedules to present at this. We're getting some really great feedback through the chat, and we know a lot of people are really looking forward to this session. So thank you so much. Seems to be very valuable for staff and the flow-on effect for carers. So we'll end it there, but thanks for coming, everyone. And we have the webinar for carers tomorrow as well. Thanks all.
Thank you so much.